So why do I say the United States is the most propagandized country in the world? Right? I don't know. It's a very simple concept. CNN will bring people on like John Bolton to talk about foreign policy with zero pushback. That's why we're the most propagandized country in the world. So they were trying to slam up Vivek Ramaswamy is someone that they cannot stand now, fam. And it's very, very frustrating to see, fam, to be honest, because I've dismantled Vivek's foreign policy. But the heat that Vivek Ramaswamy is getting, the heat that he's receiving from the corporate media, that should have been the Bernie Sanders left, standing up and speaking truth to the empire, forcing him to run segments like these. I've seen quite a few of them. But this is the funniest one because they bring on John Bolton to talk about foreign policy. And there's going to be a lot to break down here because John Bolton sounds like an unhinged psychopath throughout the course of this entire 10-minute interview. So let me play here. The most obvious ironic thing in the first take that you will have seeing this, because you look at the title here, is that Vivek Ramaswamy refuses to say whether Putin is a war criminal. Hear John Bolton's reaction. So CNN brings on a guy who is a war criminal to talk about the fact that Vivek won't criticize a war criminal.
That's
ridiculous. This is amazing. Amazing shit that this is historic, once in a generation shit that we're seeing here. And I swear to God, whoever manages CNN's YouTube channel must have a sense of humor. That's why they said, they said, hear John Bolton's reaction, almost like they point out immediately how absurd it is to bring this guy on and talk about foreign policy. So let's listen here. And there's going to be a lot of
former Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton. Ambassador Bolton, thanks for joining us. The actual news itself, the possibility of a meeting between Kim Jong-un and President Putin and Kim leaving North Korea to travel to Russia, what does that tell you?
Well, I think this is a big win for Kim Jong-un and the North Koreans in virtually every respect, certainly in the PR aspect of it, but in the ties that it will help increase between North Korea and Russia. It's mutually beneficial to both, in Russia getting weapons and ammunition. It opens the possibility.
Nick, can you pause it? Let me say this before I forget.
Yeah, go ahead.
We have to, this is why it is such an important thing that RBN is here, and maybe you alluded to this a second ago. And the reason being, Nick, the people who our Constitution says should be calling out corruption in our government is in bed with them, to where,
yes,
Nick, they are literally, Nick, bringing on a war criminal to give advice to their audience, Nick. They literally have people like he was a lobbyist for Norfolk Southern, the rail industry. He was on the panel on CNN to talk about this shit and didn't tell anybody he was one of the lobbyists. These are the types of things, Nick, that our corporate media is doing with no shame at all. A war criminal sits across from you and you're talking to him as an expert in something. That'd be like having a person who's not a doctor, or is a person who is a crazy doctor who's mutilating people, and you bringing them on as to be an expert doctor. What the hell is our media doing? What do they think of us? Who are they shielding for? Who are they here to serve? Not us, not the Constitution, as they like to always want to refer to. But go ahead, Nick.
Stop calling John Bolton a hawk. A hawk is a noble, useful bird. Bolton is a war criminal. Now, I read it from this perspective because even people who are not left as us, people who even see hawks as somewhat admirable, even they are like, man, John Bolton is fucked up. I see people who are right on foreign policy that look at John Bolton like, what the? This guy is a psychopath. You gotta know, John Bolton, as they talk about war criminals here, he literally threatened the war crimes court with sanctions. That's how unhinged he is. Meanwhile, they want us to, and they expect other countries to respect the ICC, calling for the arrest of Vladimir Putin. Meanwhile, John Bolton, like, if you even look at me, motherfucker, we will destroy you. So this is the guy that CNN brings on to critique someone else's foreign policy. So I'm gonna show you guys this real quick, because this is what they're reacting to. I think this is worth showing because this is a great segment explaining what's going on. Like, there's a massive military alliance that is being formed. There's military cooperation between Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. But despite that, you have the Biden administration sending nuclear submarines to Australia, militarizing Japan in preparation for this conflict. That I literally need you to understand that we will lose this war. Chinese have way more people than we do. They have a larger navy than we do, and they are planning military cooperation between Iran, Russia, and North Korea. No matter, and I shouldn't, and to be honest, I probably shouldn't use the term win, because no matter what happens, everyone loses. So I probably shouldn't do that. But it's going to be, I would say this, it's going to be horrific for the West. So this is what John Bolton is freaking out about, CJ. And if you look up Putin in the news right now, there are articles everywhere full of Western panic. So let me get back to this, because this is what they are breaking down. Let me read this tweet and I'll get back to video. Breaking: North Korea leader Kim Jong-un will meet Putin in Russia to discuss new arms deal. Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea are already openly entering into military cooperation and arming each other. Most likely in the near future, we will see a new military alliance or a new Warsaw Pact that will compete with NATO. And guys, what caused this to happen? NATO escalation, U.S. sanctions on Russia that drove Russia and China closer together. Now Russia are reaching out to other enemies of the West. So now Russia is closer to Iran and North Korea than ever before. So explain to me more, Matt Duss, Bernie Sanders, and all these people who believe that Joe Biden did some 3D chess move by arming Nazis in Ukraine. The only thing he did, even coming from your perspective, is unite America's enemies against us. So congratulations, you amazing 3D chess players, Anthony Blinken and Lloyd Austin, the Biden administration. You guys did exactly what you guys accused Trump would do. And alienate our allies and destabilize the geopolitical world order. That is what Joe Biden did. So now let's watch John Bolton react to it.
Yeah.
Oh shit, let me switch back to the video.
It opens the possibility of a kind of conveyor belt. If China doesn't want to supply weapons directly, it can supply them to North Korea, and then lo and behold, they could then in turn be supplied to Russia. But from Kim's point of view, for years and years of being dependent on China, for example, people estimate North Korea gets 90% of its oil from China. Now he's got a real possibility to open up oil and gas coming from Russia. And in this complex relationship between Russia and China, while they're clearly growing closer and closer, Russia's worried about China's aspirations in the region. For example, the critical naval base and port city of Vladivostok, right to the east of North Korea, was ruled by China as recently as the mid-19th century. So Putin gains by tightening the relationship between North Korea and Russia. Kim Jong-un gains now by being able to play the two off against each other, as his grandfather used to do back in the days of the Cold War.
Is absolutely
and overall, I think it's another example of the U.S. being asleep while significant geopolitical developments are underway.
Asleep, John Bolton? So Joe Biden literally creating military cooperation with Japan, Philippines, sending nuclear submarines to Australia, wrapping up propaganda, sending weapons to Taiwanese separatist groups. That's being asleep, according to John Bolton? So listen to what John Bolton said, because as that other article says, there are war hawks, there are neocons, there are war criminals, and then there are John Bolton, who is on a different tier of his own. Like, guys, do you understand how dangerous the world will be if this guy was in charge? Because now you guys probably asking yourself, if John Bolton thinks that Biden is asleep at the wheel, what do you think we should do? And even the CNN anchor is kind of confused, like, what do you think we should do then, Bolton? Like, she don't question him. She don't harshly push back, but she kind of perplexed. What do you think we should do then, sir? Let me play. Let's play. Listen, this statement is extremely interesting to me.
You think
Why? But Nick, let me ask you this question. Why in particular, I noticed, or maybe it's a coincidence, I've noticed when they do reach out to him is about particular things. One of them is North Korea. Is there a reason on North Korea they are fine with using him as an expert?
That's a great question, CJ. John Bolton, as you guys going to hear, is an insane North Korean war hawk. And if you guys want to know, that is what strained the relationship between him and Donald Trump. And John Bolton is very open about that. He was in the Trump White House freaking out when Donald Trump met with Kim Jong-un. That he was one of the vocal opponents that, as well as Mike Pompeo. And that eventually led John Bolton from splitting from Trump. So I don't want to spoil it here because there's many neocons that have been wanting to wage genocide against the North Korean people in order to forcibly crush their communist movement led by the Jusei philosophy. So I don't want to spoil it. Listen to what he says here, and you see why they bring him on from North Korea. So I actually don't want to spoil it. Listen to what he says, because now after he says that Biden administration been asleep, the obvious follow-up question is, okay, what do you think they should do? And you're going to see the anchors ask them that question. So let's listen.
U.S. being asleep while significant geopolitical developments are underway.
You think the U.S. is asleep? You're talking about the Biden administration?
You see? She's like, what? So she asked him, like, yeah, do you think the Biden administration is not doing enough about this? So let's listen to his response.
Well, I'm talking about many Americans. I mean, look, I think the pursuit of the effort to get a nuclear deal with North Korea, now 3 decades long, has proven to be a complete waste of time. I think this recent story about Kim and Putin should tell us how significant it is that we focus on the end of North Korea, not dealing with North Korea, but the reunification of the peninsula.
So,
hold on. Do you guys know what he just called for?
The reunification of the peninsula?
He is calling for restarting the Korean War. What would that do with, what does that mean regarding North Korean allies? Do you guys think China will be, why do you guys think other presidents didn't do that crazy ass shit? There's a lot of consequences to restarting the Korean War, where the American Empire killed millions in a genocide, by the way. They're one of the things like, is it war or is it genocide? The North Korean people, and they are still salty to this day. The United States did not accomplish their objective. That's why there's still 2 North Koreas. And they are still salty about it to this day. They didn't achieve no objective in North Korea. What did I explain to you guys before? The United States military is trash that do not win war. What do? They commit genocide. If you guys want to know why North Korea is the way it is, especially when it comes to clamping down on information, the United States killed millions of Koreans. And then years after that, they suffered and they were starved by the United States apparatus. John Bolton is calling for a return to that. I want to play the part again. And this is probably the most unhinged thing we play in this whole live stream. Or anything you will hear this week. What he's calling for. I want you guys to understand, George W. Bush Jr. didn't approach this way. Barack Obama didn't approach it this way. Barack Obama was a hawk. Then Donald Trump did something that made John Bolton leave his administration when meeting with Kim Jong-un and trying to normalize relationships. Probably the one good thing that Trump did, foreign policy-wise, right? And that made John Bolton leave. And now Joe Biden and his administration are doubling down on harsh North Korean policies, doubling down on sanctions, escalating military deals. So listen to this part again and realize how unhinged this guy is. And CNN brings him on as an objective foreign policy analysis, but media believe they are more objective and they are not propaganda compared to RBN. Boy, they were already fucked up with that graph. They fucked up with that draft, TJ, because now I have even more reason to do. We have even more reasons to do propaganda report because now we show you guys these people are more reliable than us. We're propaganda, but what he's doing is not. Ooh, they fucked up putting us on that list, fam. Because now we get to show you guys how ridiculous that shit is. So listen to this part again, and I'll let it play some more. And it gets even more in his. Like, we're only 2 minutes in. I'm trying to let it play some more, especially when it gets to the Vivek Ramaswamy part, which is the original reason I pulled this up. But this part was so unhinged, I wanted to show you guys this as well. And this is why CNN, and this is why the United States is the most propagandized country in the world. This guy is brought on to spill unhinged garbage with no pushback.
I think this recent story about Kim and Putin should tell us how significant it is that we focus on the end of North Korea, not dealing with North Korea, but the reunification of the peninsula.
So, Ambassador Bolton, you talked about oil and what get.
Are you not going to say anything about that insanity he said, ma'am? He just said some crazy
ass. They participate. This is what I'm saying. These are the people who's supposed to be the ones. You get what I'm saying? Your job. This is not like, that's not my time. No, your job is to do this. This is literally your job. When you're talking about, when you guys refer to the forefathers who I saw, the founding colonizers, when you say this is your job, they said the press is the one who's supposed to be protecting or be a line of protection for the regular public because you're reporting the corruption and pointing out the corruption to the public of the government. This is a former government official who has admitted to being a coup leader and planning coups, and you over here just chumming it up with him on CNN. No pushback, as he's saying, just completely unhinged, deranged shit. He looks the part too, Nick. I must say, if you're casting a movie, just cast him to play himself. Don't even do nobody else. He looks the part as an evil coup planner. Go ahead.
I saw one of my followers. I actually want to show you. This is funny. This is the guy that CNN brought on unironically here.
Now, you yourself have admitted to planning coups in other countries. What do you think Prigozhin's goal, his end game was?
Yes, sir. You are a notorious war criminal who planned coups in other countries, destabilizing their sovereignty in entire regions. But explain to me your opinion on this foreign policy. What the fuck?
Explain to me your opinion about this shit.
Yeah, I know you did some work on. Now tell me your opinion on what's your favorite sandwich. Guys, this is why it's so unbelievable.
It's ridiculous.
It's so unbelievable because media watching this shit unironically and think they're getting reliable news. I want to show you guys that. That's funny. Big shout. Who posted that in my mentions? Big shout out to Newsman for sharing that. Anyway, let's get back to the segment. That's the guy that CNN brought on again. So CJ, that clip I just played showed that they know what he has done, but they still bring him on. Crazy, right? But now this part actually funnier because I think he actually said something that's crazier, if I remember right. Now this led me to tweet about it. I did a live tweet. Now listen to this part again.
Dealing with North Korea, but the reunification of the peninsula.
So, Ambassador Bolton, you talked about oil and what getting oil from Russia could mean for North Korea, but what about the weapons technology that North Korea wants from Russia? If it gets what it wants on those fronts, what is the immediate risk to the West and the more long-term risk?
Well, I think North Korea has been receiving clandestine assistance on missiles and the nuclear programs from China and Russia for a long time. They used to admit it.
No evidence. Can you pause it? No evidence at all. I'm just going to say some completely unhinged shit with no evidence. I wonder, did she push back on that? Like to say, do you have any evidence of that, sir? Can you show me something? Because you just said something that's pretty crazy to say. It would be nice if you had some information. Go ahead.
Fantastic test, CJ. Listen to what he says after this too, because this also perked my ears up when I heard it the first time.
Nuclear programs from China and Russia for a long time. They used to admit it. In recent years, they've denied it. I'm not sure those denials are credible. The North Korean
citation needed. Citation needed. But you already said, because I went pause there too. Citation needed. He even missed, like, they denied it from happening. So why are they doing these meetings for these weapons deals now? Like, anyway, let's continue.
Korean missile force is based on Russian supplied technology, formerly Scud missiles. But the potential now is very significant, because while North Korea has demonstrated both that it can detonate nuclear devices and that it can fire missiles that have a range to hit the continental United States, it has not yet demonstrated it has the targeting capability to hit the places it aims at, or necessarily the technology to bring a nuclear weapon back into the atmosphere in a warhead.
Quick question, fam. I want you to think about this. If North Korea is so dangerous, why do we keep fucking with them? Hey, CJ, I know some dangerous ass niggas in the hood here. I don't fuck with them. There's only one thing, and I want you guys, if you have North Korea Kim Jong-un derangement syndrome, I want you to understand this. There's only one thing that would cause North Korea to launch an attack, and that is if their country is in the brink of ruins and they had nothing to lose. So guess what John Bolton wants to create? Guess what situation he wants to create? He wants to destroy North Korea and put them in position where they have nothing to lose. If we leave these motherfuckers alone, they are not nuking California. Shit libs. Anyway, sorry. He didn't even get to the craziest part. Let me continue.
Head that's secure enough that it's not destroyed on re-entry. Russia obviously has both those capabilities. I'm sure that's what North Korea wants.
Ambassador, can I circle back to what you said about the idea of the end, people being asleep at the wheel or asleep at the switch to some degree?
So this guy does what she did not do. I actually did not catch it the first time, but this is the follow-up I went for. Because he said that crazy unhinged shit about ending North Korea, and then Dum Dum over there, the dumb blonde whatever, she did ask a completely insignificant follow-up when you compare what the crazy shit you just said. So the other guy, like, hold on, let me circle back to that crazy shit you just said. And then you guys, I don't want to spoil. Listen to his questions. This is actually a good follow-up in the sense that he gets John Bolton to reveal himself. He still doesn't push back, but this is a good follow-up question. Listen to this part. This is what Dum Dum should have said over there.
Circle back to what you said about the idea of the end, people being asleep at the wheel or asleep at the switch to some degree, and the end of North Korea being kind of the necessary outcome at this point, not whatever has been happening, I think, over several administrations, several decades at this point. I guess my question is, how does that happen, right? If you look at allies in the region, while many people look at the current administration's policy as being, the Indo-Pacific policy as being entirely China-based, when you look at the relationship between Japan and South Korea that has formed and I think evolved over the course of the last couple of years, you could say that also has to do with North Korea as well. What's the gap between that and ending North Korea as you propose?
So that was a word salad in a lot of ways, but it still was a good follow-up, because what he said is, you want to end North Korea, how are you doing that? Explain, how are you doing that, sir? That's a very wordy way of saying that. So let's listen. And I think this is, you have 1A and 1B, what he said earlier, and now you have this. This is crazy what you're about to say right now. So the question is, how will you end North Korea? Because you have criticism of Biden and other people for not doing enough. So let's hear John Bolton's solution to this problem.
Well, the division of North Korea into South Korea in 1945 was intended to be temporary,
right?
Just as we've seen the division between East and West Germany end. But for decades, American leaders in both parties have just routinely accepted that this hereditary communist dictatorship has to be the strangest form of government on earth today, is just going to go on forever. And I think we need to begin with a psychological and political change that we do not accept North Korea as a legitimate state. And I think cooperation between South Korea and Japan and the U.S. is a big step toward it. The policy is simple, but not one that the administrations, Republican or Democratic, have been willing to follow, which is even more significant sanctions against North Korea. And
so he's saying the red and the blue team, they both think I'm crazier than a motherfucker, and they say no to this shit. That's what he's saying, Nick. He's saying they say I'm crazy to even want this. Both teams say that. That's what he's saying, Nick. Go ahead.
You know how crazy that is, fam? Because, by the way, he even admits it. He even admits it in his answer. even more sanctions. He say even more because we already sanctioning them to death. So what he said in his answer is he looked at every single president in the last few decades, and he like, you pussy, George W. Bush Jr., you pussy, Barack Obama, you pussy, Donald Trump, you pussy. We should completely enable a genocide against the North Korean people. That is what he's calling for. And the guy was like, what's your policy? What's your policy? You saying this? What's your policy? He said, starve them to death. So to show you guys how unhinged this psychopath is, let's say I see one of the comments acknowledge how psychopathic. To acknowledge how psychopathic this guy is, and generally U.S. politics is regarding North Korea, this is what they say, CJ. They say North Korea is a authoritarian dictatorship that creates a country that is bad for the North Korean people. So we must liberate North Korea so the North Korean people can live better. So in order to do that, we got to sanction and starve those same people to death. How does that compute? In order to liberate the North Korean people, we have to starve them to death. Do you guys think they really care about the North Korean people? So what John Bolton advocated for is to literally starve them and commit a genocide in North Korea so the Korean peninsula will be unified again. Kill as many North Koreans as it takes so that country will be weak enough so that South Korea can unify the Korean peninsula. This position is so insane. That's why Bolton said, nigga, even the most unhinged neocons in both parties look, I'm crazy.
That's exactly what they do.
So I actually
but that doesn't stop CNN. This is another time to point that out.
Yeah.
So CNN, John Bolton, the guy who Republicans and Democrats say is unhinged, a unhinged warmonger. You say bring that nigga on to be expert testimony. Yes. This is how far their Trump derangement has gone. Yes. This is how far it's gone. But go ahead, Nick.
John Bolton. That's a great point, CJ. They bring John Bolton on because he said Trump bad. John Bolton say Trump bad, so let's talk to him. So once again, that guy had a good initial follow, but is he gonna question this unhinged answer that I want to play again? Because I want to play this. This part is worth listening to again because this is when the guy asks the follow-up question: "What will you do?" And he starts with his nonsense. I think I'll play from right here. That's good.
And with a psychological and political change that we do not accept North Korea as a legitimate state. And I think cooperation between South Korea and Japan and the US is a big step toward it. The policy is simple, but not one that the administrations, Republican or Democratic, have been willing to follow, which is
why do you think that is
even more significant sanctions against North Korea and the determination and making it clear to both China and Russia that we expect that we're going to do what we said we'd do in 1945 and bring the regime back into unification with the South. If we don't focus on the policy, it won't happen.
Now, what they're not saying here, Nick,
worked in the Trump administration.
What they're not saying when they're talking about reunifying, you have to ask the question, why are they reunifying? What is the economic model of the people in North Korea that capitalists absolutely hate?
Yep.
Communism, or at least leaning towards communism. It's not a fully communistic state, but it has elements of communism. It projects that it wants to be that, and that's not something the capitalists can have. And he is one of the capitalists that is the most deranged, that is the most willing, Nick, to take it to the end. So you hear this guy like John Bolton, and then you ask, why aren't they doing anything about climate change? You really think a person who thinks like this, listen to what he's saying. Armageddon, willing to take it there. Why would they give a damn about climate change? This is why it doesn't make sense when we're talking about social democracy. I'm going on a little bit tangent. Social democracy, like Bernie Sanders and AOC, expecting this government to do anything tangibly for the climate crisis. But anyway, I went on a tangent. Go ahead, Nick. Back to North Korea.
Yeah,
go ahead.
So this is why this is the real reason. This Cold War remnant ideology, destroying any alternative. You had the revolution that was inspired by Jusei ideology, where they completely rejected capitalism, which led the United States to commit a genocide because they not having that shit. They killed millions. And CJ, literally worth doing a live stream on this shit alone. And I need to bring an expert on because I'm not an expert at this. I read a lot about it. I've seen documentaries. I'm not great at explaining it. But the United States government committed a genocide in order to prevent the rise of Marxist-Leninist ideology. The Jusei ideology is a blend of more like Buddhist, Southeast Chinese philosophy on how to love and take care of each other. And it's a blend of Marxist-Leninism. Now, once again, I need to learn more about this. But it's like a different blend and style of Marxist-Leninism, and the North Korean government is on the route and they are trying to achieve Marxist-Leninist socialist ideologies and principles. That's why, once again, do you see massive homeless in North Korea? No, they got people. They give people houses, and to show you guys what I mean, they had food surplus all the time, and certain fields and agriculture. For example, they grown a massive influx of peaches one year. They grew way too many peaches. The farmers overdid it. Like, man, we got so many peaches. You want to know what they did? They gave the peaches to the people. They fed the people with their production, with the means of production. Are they completely there? Not yet. But they completely solidify their means of production based on the people. Housing all about the people. Food, everything right about the people, right? So
meanwhile, in the United States, you have Walmart throwing away hundreds of pounds of food every single day, Nick.
Yep.
What would happen in the United States if the farmers grew too much?
You think
they will call up the local people and be like, hey, come get some free peaches? Fuck no. They'd rather throw that shit up because then that keeps the prices up. It's all about keeping the prices where they're at. But go ahead, Nick. It's so infuriating.
Now, big shout out to our friend of the network, Didi, because remember, Didi is a friend of the network. She was banned on Twitter a long time ago. She never came back because she didn't really care about it like that. Because she used to post these threads debunking U.S. propaganda against North Korea. That's why I'm mad she was banned, because she had a great tweet thread talking about the peaches and how they distribute food in North Korea. Things that they will never talk about in this country. How North Korea struggles because they are victims of Western sanctions. But with the resources that they use to feed, clothe, and house their people. So this is the question for capitalists. If you guys believe that Marxist-Leninist socialist ideology does not work, why won't you leave them alone? Why don't you stop the sanctions on North Korea and allow them to function properly? They don't do that. They starve the country and then say, oh my God, look how North Korea is struggling. It's because of the sanctions. They take care of their people to the best of their ability despite massive sanctions. The United States is a country that is sanctioned by nobody but has Skid Row and hunger. You guys see how one system is a failure compared to the other? Yeah, our country is unsanctioned with poor people. You guys see the difference? Anyway, I kind of went off a tangent, and I kind of split these into two segments. So, Aaron, these probably gonna be two different segments because the DPRK and the Vivek. The Vivek segment I don't think is gonna be as long as this one, because that's more like a funny footnote, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think this part gonna be way longer than the Vivek part. But so John Bolton says this crazy shit. John Bolton essentially says he's going to commit, and he would like to see the United States commit a genocide in North Korea. So you asked this question earlier, CJ. What do they say after their guest says the top 3 most unhinged thing this year on your show? What do you say in response to that? So let's see. I'll just go back a few seconds. Let's look at their follow-up.
To do what we said we'd do in 1945 and bring the regime back into unification with the South. If we don't focus on the policy, it won't happen.
You worked in the Trump administration, but have since been very critical of the way that Trump has interacted with, courtship with, if you will, Kim and Putin.
Yeah, I know you just said some crazy ass shit, but you said Trump bad. Can you say Trump bad first, please? Say it again. We love when you say Trump bad. Do it again.
It was so uncomfortable. The guy, when he turned and looked at her, you can cut that uncomfortability. I can see that both of you are so uncomfortable with what that guy was just saying, and it's so surreal. But go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, let's see what he said this part. I actually don't remember this part, so I actually want to see what they say here.
But have since been very critical of the way that Trump has interacted with, courtship with, if you will, Kim and Putin.
To that point, that's what I explained earlier. Remember, the one good thing Trump did was try to normalize relationships with North Korea. The only good fucking thing. So I used to see communists that around my community all the time. They used to say, CJ, that even though they're not voting for Trump, the idea that Biden the lesser two evil compared to Trump is not true. They view Trump as the lesser evil just because of his North Korea policy. So they're so close, right, that you can't separate them. The North Korea thing, they were like, nigga, Trump is the lesser evil. He normalized the relationship with DPRK. But anyway, let's continue. And so this is where they bring up this difference. And this is what led John Bolton to leave Trump's administration. And that's when he became a Trump hater because he was so appalled at Trump's DPRK policy. So this is where they addressed that. And I actually forget what John Bolton says here in response. So I want to see what he says.
Kim and Putin. I'm interested in your take on how one of his Republican competitors in the primary, Vivek Ramaswamy, chose to not answer questions about whether he thinks Putin is a war criminal, because it reminds me of some questions that then President Trump was asked about Putin. Here's that exchange with reporters yesterday in New Hampshire.
Yes or no?
I think that Putin is a dictator, and I think that there are open questions that need to be adjudicated by the ICCJ. We have an ICCJ for a reason. My job as the U.S. president is to advance American interests. So I think Putin's actions have been craven. Not much I will say, and I've said it all along.
But do you believe he's a war criminal?
We have to get the facts before we get to the bottom of that.
These motherfuckers discovered the word war criminal literally last year, CJ. When have you ever seen them talk about war criminals on corporate media? And then they want people to pretend that only Putin is a war criminal. But I'll let it continue real quick.
You previously called the International Criminal Court illegitimate when it issued that warrant to arrest Putin, accusing him of war crimes. What do you make of Vivek Ramaswamy not answering the question of whether or not he thinks Putin is a war criminal?
Well,
can you
That's
pause
your
it? What
question?
is the value? What is the value in asking a slave owner if another slave, what I'm trying to get at is what is the value in this war criminal calling out a person for not saying somebody else is a war? I don't get what the value in this in getting his answer would be, even if what is the value in that he is saying this? That's what I don't get. But go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, that just shows CNN's bias, and that's why. Once again, this don't have to be a long part. In fact, I'll change my mind. We can probably throw this at the end of the last segment because you guys just see how absurd it is for CNN to bring on John Bolton to criticize Vivek Ramaswamy for not calling Putin a war criminal, as CNN does not inform their audience that John Bolton is a war criminal. You guys see how absurd this is? So I forgot what he said here, because I remember at this part I kind of raised quick. I was like, dude, this is so stupid. You asking a war criminal about this.
Yeah.
And fam, let me say this straight up. If you believe that Vladimir Putin has killed more people than Joe Biden, you're the sweetest summer child I ever seen in my life. You're the sweetest of the brand of summer children. If you believe that Putin, even with the Ukraine war, is anywhere near Joe Biden, you're the sweetest child possible if you believe that. But meanwhile, CNN would never dare to call Joe Biden a war criminal. Propaganda report. Media, I put these people as the most reliable news outlet. That's surely not propaganda. Only RBN does propaganda. That's which I admit. I do anti-imperialist propaganda exposing these people. I do propaganda on behalf of the working class, on behalf of the anti-war movements. I do propaganda, and I do the job that journalists should be doing. The fourth estate that hold these motherfuckers responsible, not giving them a tongue bath interview. So for the sake of time, we can wrap the segment up. Let's listen to a response, and then we close real quick. There'll be the last part of play.
I think Ramaswamy reminds me an awful lot of Donald Trump. He has very firm opinions on subjects he knows absolutely nothing about. And this was an example of it. And if he supports the International Criminal
This is
Court,
why they bring him
as he
on.
appeared to do in that statement, I hope he reaffirms that and makes clear why he thinks the ICC is such a good idea. Look, this is something that ultimately
So he still against the
is going to have
ICC.
to be resolved either by the Russians themselves or by the Ukrainians. And the main point is that Ramaswamy has made other statements about this war and about what he's going to do to try and solve it. Like Trump said, he would put Zelensky and Putin in a room and he'd have it solved in 24 hours. Ramaswamy is going to go to Moscow, convince Putin to break the alliance with China and end the war that way. I mean, they might as well be in kindergarten talking about a very complex.
This is why Vivek is a horrible messenger, the same way that
Yeah,
RFK
he
is a
is.
horrible messenger. Because the first thing that Vivek says is realistic and based. Because it's possible. Who broke up a peace deal that was going to happen? Boris Johnson in the United States. So it is 100% possible to get Zelensky and Putin in a room because that is what they initially want until Zelensky got ordered from the West. So the first thing Vivek said is good. But this is why Vivek is a clown that must be called out. You guys see, he says one true thing, and he says one thing that's fucking stupid as hell. So now what John Bolton does, because this is actually a great, I didn't catch this the first time I watched this. This is actually a great propaganda technique that John Bolton does because he took a good thing that Vivek said, and then he ties it with the dumb shit he said. He said, well, he also believes that you can end the Russia-China lines. You see how he believes these two dumb things? That's why we can't have imperfect messengers like Vivek, because he leaves opening like this where he can tie these things together. That's why Alex Jones is very problematic. Alex Jones will say one thing that is true, but then he will say some other bullshit that delegitimizes other true claims. And John Bolton actually takes advantage of it pretty well there. But anyway, I think I can wrap here. I just want to point because I think we went pretty long on that. We can get super chats. Short segments that you have, CJ.
Not a short segment, but I do want to add something to this segment.
Oh, go ahead.
It's roughly related, and maybe we can dive into the article another time, like the details of this article. But I don't know if you saw this on the Washington Post, and because we're talking about Ukraine, all these sort of foreign policy, but Russiagate is back, and John Bolton still sort of pushes Russiagate. But Musk's new Twitter policy helped spread Russian propaganda EU, and this is specifically about Ukraine. So basically, they're trying to say what we believe and why support for Ukraine is going down is because of some Russian disinformation on platforms as such as Twitter. But we'll get into this later. But I did want to include that in this segment with John Bolton, because all of this is sort of playing the same sort of role. You got the propaganda about Korea, and then you got the propaganda about Russia and Ukraine. That it all ties together, and the narratives for all of this are falling apart. That's why you're seeing them bring on John Bolton, because the narrative about it is falling apart. That's why you're seeing articles like this in the Washington Post where they're talking about there's still Russian disinformation. I just can't believe, Nick, even after the Twitter files, even after all of these things, they're still trying to push the stuff about North Korea. They're still trying to push the stuff about China. They're still trying to push the stuff about the proxy war in Russia. It's unbelievable, but it all ties together. That's my final word on
that just show how power never concedes anything without struggle. Do you guys think that the establishment will allow us to tell the truth about stuff just because the internet came about? No, they're going to do everything they can to clamp down and control the flow of information. And if things really get squirrely, you guys see exactly why they expanded the police state, exactly why they needed the Patriot Act. Do you guys think it's a coincidence that they building Cop City just as people were becoming more class conscious, as late stage capitalism continued to get worse? Now they got Cop City. You got to think
Right.
that. No, they're arming up and getting ready for this rising discontent against our government. That's gonna happen. I think it's been slow. I think it should happen earlier. Obviously, what the Bernie movement try to capture was something that we wanted to propel to a larger movement, but it's gonna happen. We just want it to happen faster, right? I want it to happen with less people dying, but whether it happen in 5 years, 25 years, as a revolutionary, I truly believe with the state of our society that shit is gonna pop off soon. We just wanted it to happen before we have 70,000 plus more people die each year without healthcare. You know what I mean? So the establishment, understanding this, is getting their army ready. And they are continuing to poke the bear at the workers. How much can we get away with? How much can the capitalist class steal from the workers without them rebelling? How much can we strip away their labor protections? You guys know they got child fucking labor back? Child labor is back. So they're like, man, we're going to see how much we can get away with until these niggas snap. And when they do snap, they fucked up because they gave us a police state to squash it. These fucking dumbass motherfuckers. They said we got Second Amendment to stand against the government. Meanwhile, they gave us all the guns. They gave us tanks and shit. They gave us armored cars, but then they think they're going to resist the government. Great job. Great job, guys. Helping our establishment build police states so they can resist the workers. Fantastic move by the left, guys.